Hello, my name is Ken Tate. I'm a professor with the University of California at Davis in the Department of Plant Sciences. Today I'm going to give you a brief summary about riparian grazing management that's relative to rangelands and pasture lands in California and across the western U.S. Riparian areas, which are wetland areas such as meadows or stream corridors, as depicted in these photographs, represent less than 1% of the land area in western rangelands across the U.S. However, they supply unique ecosystem services within this arid landscape. Unique plants, unique animal species, and both aquatic and terrestrial depend upon these habitats within this arid system. Yet these occupy a very small area. And they can be quite vulnerable to excessive use by free grazing livestock because they have relatively high quality, nutritious forage, and they have drinking water and microclimate conditions that are attractive to livestock as well as wildlife species. When we think about unmanaged riparian grazing and the three steps or the consequences of not managing riparian grazing properly, the first outcome that can occur, is the first step towards some environmental degradation, is chronic, unchecked, heavy grazing in the riparian area. Because these areas have so many resources that livestock seek in this landscape, livestock will concentrate in them and spend excessive amounts of time creating detrimental outcomes for the plant species that exist there, as well as for the stream banks and soils that are on those sites. This can begin a process towards stream bank and stream channel instability, as demonstrated here in the second photograph, where you've got a system that has bare banks, there's evidence of erosion occurring, and you're beginning to be set up for a situation where catastrophic erosion and downcutting, entrenching of the stream, or excessive widening of the stream can occur due to erosion of the stream banks, say during high storm events or during high snowmelt years and springs. And so these three steps together can set you up to where you can have a long-term loss of ecosystem services due to a depleted water table, changes in vegetation, reduced habitat quality, reduced flood flow attenuation potential can all come from these processes. So thinking then about how grazing management in a landscape is correlated to riparian health, we did a study where we looked across 130 grazed sites on rangeland systems in California and basically correlated statistically the management that had been occurring on those sites with the relative health of that riparian area based on its stream bank stability, the type of vegetation that was there, and the habitat values that it provided. So high to low riparian health. And we found several significant relationships between livestock management at those sites and resulting riparian health. First, the use of off-stream attractants such as water tanks and supplements was positively correlated. So the number of person days per year that a manager invested in making sure that livestock could find drinking water, that they were maintaining drinking water sources, or placing supplements such as salts away from riparian areas to attract livestock to those non-riparian areas to spend more time there, less time in the riparian area, and thus reduce impacts, was positively correlated. It was the amount of effort. We found that herding, the time-old tradition of herding livestock, was positively correlated to health in a riparian area. Spending time moving livestock away from riparian areas on horseback or however was positively correlated. And again, both of these are reducing the amount of time that livestock spend and thus use in riparian areas. Rest period duration, we always recommend rest for pastures from grazing in any situation. And so we found that as we increase the amount of rest from grazing that was provided to a riparian area in terms of days per year, we saw a positive correlation or an increase in riparian health as duration of rest in a given year increased. In terms of negative correlations, we found that as grazing duration increased at a site, on average, we found reductions in riparian health. As the livestock density, say number of cows per acre, increased at a site, on average we saw a reduction in riparian health. And then as we increase the frequency of grazing bouts during a year, we graze it, say, twice during the growing season or 4 times during the growing season. As we increase the number of times we come back to the same pasture, which has a riparian area in it, we find an overall reduction in riparian health. Thinking about riparian-friendly grazing, then the grazing activities that are correlated with increased riparian health, we found in general activities that represent effort, management effort, to limit or reduce livestock utilization and frequency of defoliation in riparian areas was positively correlated with outcomes such as increased bank stability, access of the water body of the river to its floodplain, to increased flood attenuation, richness and diversity of in-stream macroinvertebrates or insects, filtration of water, etc. So some key take-home points. Riparian enhancement must be a goal. If we're going to see an improvement in a riparian area that is grazed, we must make riparian enhancement one of our management goals. There's a grazing toolbox that is required. There's no single management strategy that will work on every situation. We're going to have to use a toolbox of grazing practices which exist to achieve improved riparian health. The management must be site-specific and adaptive to changing conditions. Every site has unique challenges and opportunities, and we have to take advantage of those. The management has to be logistically and economically feasible. It has to be something that a manager can make part of their day-to-day business. So we have to be realistic about what we recommend and what we attempt in terms of grazing management to improve riparian areas. And we have to remember that that riparian area and that riparian pasture are part of a larger ranch or range management operation, and that livestock have got to be somewhere at every day during the year. And so we've got to integrate the use of that riparian area into the larger grazing management plan of the entire ranch, and that feeds back to it being logistically feasible. Thank you very much.
For more information on this topic, we invite you to view a more in-depth presentation that provides science-based insights and conclusions. You can find this and other ranch water quality presentations on the UC Rangelands website, and look for the Water Quality Information Hub or direct your web browser to the URL shown on this slide.